Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's been some time, but hello, we are doing a One Piece official chapter review. And this is going to be for chapter 1163, a chapter that I thought warranted a good old-fashioned review. Obviously, if you haven't already seen my One Piece chapter reaction on my Cold Requiem YouTube channel, of course, the full thing on my twitch.tv channel, with the post-chapter discussion with Tier 3 guys, of course, obviously. The reaction on this channel, check those all out, links in the box below. This chapter is a doozy. Whoa, this chapter is one of the better chapters for sure in the Elbaf flashback. Keep in mind that this is an Elbaf flashback. God Valley so far has been very intense. It's been very groundbreaking and shocking on so many fronts. In this chapter, probably one of the most shocking chapters in the entirety of the God Valley flashback. Because even though the theories about rocks turning were there, the method about how that happened, it differed from theory to theory. However, the fact that Imu just does it to rocks is something that I think folks did not expect, where it just happens. We'll dive into that too. Though I do have a video that's already out at this point in time, talking about my takes on why this is the case. So you can check out that video over here as well, boom. And on that note, before we go into this chapter review, I do have to give a brief word for today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Phishing attempts, cyber attacks, all the nasty hoo-ha malware and viruses that are out there in the World Wide Web. You need protection in your day-to-day life. Make sure that when you venture to these insane spots on the web, you are secure. And I know, my anime manga faithful, we go to some crazy, gnarly spots on the web. To each their own, but you do need a shield when you venture off into these dangerous parts of the woods, and let Surfshark VPN be that shield. Not only does it have anti-malware, antivirus features, but also it does have IP changing functionalities wherein which wherever you are, no one will know who you are. So Surfshark VPN can clean all that nasty stuff that is going to try and harm your device, and it doesn't matter which device it is. Whether it's Windows, whether it's Macintosh or Linux, whether it's on your desktop, laptop, phone, iPad, you name it, Surfshark VPN has you covered on all your devices, and it's available in so many different countries across the entire world. And one of the things I do absolutely hate is region gating, and I love how Surfshark VPN can circumnavigate region gating with the region change feature. So there are certain shows, animes, movies that I want to check out that, let's say normally I can't on Netflix, on Hulu, you name it. Well, I can easily change my region, and then voila, I can gain access to that material, to those shows that normally I couldn't gain access to. So if you like what you hear, and you absolutely should, scan this QR code right here, don't be shy, or you can go in the box below to the website surfshark.com/KOL and get 4 extra months off of your purchase of Surfshark VPN. So, lads and ladies, on that note, let us get back to the video content at hand. So with that all being said, let's dive headfirst into this chapter review. And first and foremost is going to be what? The chapter structure and pacing. For this chapter, very good. Predominantly pacing. Structure in terms of the paneling, at times it may be a little bit cluttered at times. Well, let's say the treasure, whenever you have Captain John do his thing, when you have the combo move on Emu, you have all these different cuts to different characters. So you can argue that there's some clutter with the paneling, but the overall pace is that in general, there are about 3 parts to this chapter. Number 1, we have Emu's descension as Emu's riding on top of Saturn, kind of reminding you of that Big Mom and Kaido meme, but the synergy is there between Emu and Saturn, and you have these very nice standoffs between Emu, Rocks, and company. So that's part number 1. Part number 2 is that we cut away from that fight to what's going on with Monkey D. Dragon trying to get Shanks off the island, trying to keep his promise to Shanks' mom, and he gets sucked in by Captain John. And so Captain John is trying to accumulate all the treasure in the area. Then he gets thwarted by Ganzyu, and after that in comes Shiki, and so on and so forth. So that's all part number 2, a lesser part to the overall chapter. And then part 3 is that we go back to fight against Emu. We have a devastating combo move onto Emu by Rocks, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom. But Emu's immortality factor is the highest of all the immortals so far, obviously. And then Emu starts to take control of Rocks' body with the Domai River Sai, or Dami River Sea. I prefer enunciating the I way more, so that's why I say Domai River Sai. It sounds more regal in that sense. That being said, though, I know I'm saying it wrong. I don't care. That being said, those are the 3 parts to this chapter. And in terms of pace, The chapter is very well paced. I think that the best paced chapters of One Piece are the chapters that are about 5 parts or below. Once you get like 6 or 7 parts, that means that half the chapter we're kind of like jumping around from part to part, location to location, place to place, where it's kind of discombobulated a lot of times. But in this chapter, we have 3 parts, which I think is great. That's number 1. Number 2, character components for this chapter. And for this chapter, there are quite a bit. There's big reveals, there's big question marks, and let's tackle them one by one. I'm gonna save Emu for last because, well, it's Emu. Emu does require a lot of things for his character for this chapter. Before Emu, let's get to Garp. Garp is willing to attack Saturn. In his mind, it's Saturn still. And Saturn, despite knowing that, gets a Galaxy Impact in that combo move. So considering how he was feeling about the atrocity on God Valley, they start to realize earlier in the arc, and now seeing Garp's reaction to Saturn in this unique state, and Garp willing to commit to attacking Saturn, even though his fellow compatriots, the Marines, say, no, whoa, wait, don't do that. And there's no Sengoku to yell at him and say, Garp, and pin him down. The fact that Garp was willing to commit this is actually pretty impressive, honestly. And it makes you wonder why Garp is still a Marine. That's a question for the ages. He even at this point in time refers to the highest authority as maggots. The words he used in the official are maggots. So even though Garp does follow orders, he's a Marine through and through, at the same time, he is the closest Marine to a pirate in the world of One Piece, where this dude legitimately attacked one of the 5 elders of the world in his mind, and he did so with gusto, because after the combo attack, what did he say? He literally says, and I quote, "My blow did the trick," as you see Emu start to try and reform from all that damage. So kudos to Garp, and I've said it before a few times too, but this only adds to the fact that, in my personal opinion, Garp is still one of the best written characters in One Piece. I've made videos in the past, way back when, defending Garp's actions at Marineford, or lack thereof, and why it was actually a good call on his part to not go and save Ace. On that note, let's move on to another character. Characters I never thought would actually need time for a review, but here we are. Number 1, Captain John. So we saw in previous chapters that he probably had kids deaf with ability, just how in a similar vein to Wano Country, where the old lady, the Baba, and the beautiful old man, they had the powers of Bartolomeo and Bon Clay in the previous era, while Captain John had Captain Kidd's power in this era. And it's confirmed to us when we do see him pull in all of the gold, weapons, any sort of metal in the area. He is literally pulling into him as he's trying to steal the treasure, because now he believes the time is right. And then they even say that's Captain John's magnet power. And there are going to be a few folks that are jumping for joy with this reveal, because there are folks that have been saying for some time now that Captain John and Captain Kidd are related, because in real life they refer to Captain John Kidd and Captain William, the kid of Captain John. So just how a lot of times in the story, Oda will utilize real life notorious pirates to make characters, to accentuate certain features of a pirate and so on and so forth, we have the same thing here, where Captain John, it's not confirmed that he's Kidd's father, but he could be Kidd's father. At the bare minimum, he did have Kidd's devil fruit. And we know that he, of course, did die, because we see way back when Thriller Bark, where he was part of the General Zombies. So for all the cats that really wanted the idea of Captain Kidd being related to Captain John, these folks were spot on, they sniped it. Does that mean that Kidd has any intel on Captain John's treasure? Probably not. Does that mean that Kidd will come back to the story, he's actually not dead? Probably. What we also find out is that Guanzui has the same power as Mr. 5. At least that's how I believe so. Where Captain John, even though he has all this gusto and bravado and he's stealing all the treasure, he does get one shot. He gets one tap by Guanzui, who has some sort of black little ball or substance on his index finger, and then he flicks at Captain John, which he calls the Sky Snake Red Cannon. This, to me, I think is the powers of Mr. 5, because I think that's a booger. Even though it has a very fancy name, it's pretty badass, and you see the huge explosion, it seems to be a Mr. 5 ability, where Mr. 5 is known for making his boogers into explosions. Though to be fair, it doesn't have to be a booger, he's an exploding human. So it could be something else that's part of his body, and then he's flicking that. Maybe let's say he has a storage, a stockpile of clumps of hair, beads of hair, they mix the balls, and he just flicks those, and boom, big explosions. Potentially. But if he has a ready stockpile of snot, oh, if he has a ready stockpile of boogers at his disposal, just use those things and just flick them. All you know is that the result was a huge explosion from where he flicked, and it's almost bar for bar what Gem, Mr. 5 would do. So I'm guessing he has the powers of the boom boom fruit. Next for character are a few folks that we see fight against Emu and do their main attacks on Emu. And for the first time, getting a Whitebeard named attack. So let's start there. Whitebeard, in the entirety of the series, including Marineford, he's done all these crazy things, all these gnarly moves. Whitebeard has never had any named attack officially in the series, whether it be manga or anime. He has a few moves in the One Piece Pirate Warriors video games, like finisher moves, but never has actually had in earnest a named attack in the series until today. And officially, it's called the Chalk Hakua, which is an intriguing name, though nor near as cool as Shattering Void that we get in the scanlation version of that chapter. But the results are a really, really cool pose, and there appears to be Haki that's jettisoning out of the crack that we see in the space that he's punching in. And I'm guessing that Haki is of the Conqueror's sort, the Conquer Haki infusion kind of Haki. And also we're finding out too that Big Mom with her Ikoku Sovereignty is putting oodles of Haki on that as well. We get to see her in the distant. She does her Ikoku Sovereignty, and we get to see a very thick, distinct black bolt of lightning on her blade. Also, a fun fact, if you didn't notice this, she's riding Zeus. Now, unless that's a different cloud, let's say that's Moose instead of Zeus. Maybe. Remember, in chapter 1145, Goldberg's shield, Nash, revealed that Zeus among the homies is one of the most exalted homies.
It's all coming together.
Zeus was at God Valley. Zeus, Nami, could literally talk to Zeus and get the scoop of one of the biggest incidences in human history. But will that be a thing Oda ever brings up with Zeus? Probably not, but I hope he does. And then we got to see a new move from Rock Zizabek. We got to see Pandemonium. What that does exactly, I don't know. The stance is kind of crazy, but keep in mind that his sword technique does have a blunt force trauma component to it. So it's probably a rapid fire version of that in some way. That's my guess here. And then finally, not Roger, not Garp, but Kaido. Kaido, who just got his dragon ability, literally named his first attack Dragon. Unironically, it was Dragon in the scans, and I thought, okay, hold on, maybe that's a mistranslation. No. The Viz also confirmed it's just Dragon. Okay. Homeboy's not used to his powers, he just got them. So right now he's workshopping them, trying to figure out what to do. He's gonna fire off something, a bit confused, but the idea of blast breath, Boro breath, that's not something that Kyle's kind of thought about just yet. But the damage is unmistakable. And now we get the Emu here for character. For character, Emu gets the lion's share because for character, Emu does a few things in this chapter and says a few things in this chapter that are very interesting here. So, number one, he does mistake it, or I say it. You know what? Let's start at zero here for a second. Let's start at zero. It looks like Emu is genuinely a shadow entity of some kind because the reactions to Emu seem to be thus. What is that thing? What's going on here? Is that a new form? There's no sort of note to a hidden shape or a hidden form that we can't see, that Oda's still keeping hidden from us, the audience. And it'd be really, really strange that Emu makes landfall. Emu arrives at God Valley. Maybe not in person. Maybe let's say it's an Emu avatar in some way, potentially. But if this is Emu in full, are we gonna still keep Emu as a silhouetted entity? At this point, when Emu's doing attacks, showing off skills, that'd be very odd. That'd be really strange. So I think we can comfortably say that Emu is a shadow entity. When Emu was first introduced to us, the readers in the story, when Emu sat on the true throne, that was Emu in earnest. Oda never hid Emu from us. The silhouette is Emu. Though you could argue if there is a true body or a core form of some kind, like let's say in the same vein as the Vegapunks, where there's the real Stella body and then you have the satellite body. So there could be a real Emu body out there, probably hidden somewhere on the Holy Land, if that's the case. Or let's say Emu's favorite body, so it's not Emu's own body, but it's the body, let's say even more so than Gunko, it's Emu's fair body from ancient times, something of that sort. That could work out too for sure. But I would say for the time being, lads and ladies, let's call it what it is. Emu is a shadow entity. And then if Oda wants to reveal more about that in the future, he will. Now, that's 0. 1 for character. Emu refers to Rocks as Davy Jones, and then Rock says, you got the wrong guy, I've never even met him. And Emu did something similar too when describing Luffy as Joy Boy. When Emu eradicated Saturn, killed him, Emu used the words Joy Boy, specifically Joy Boy, when referring to Luffy. Why does Emu keep on doing that? Emu's been around for a very long time, so there's a chance here where Emu's not doing that intentionally, because these are the folks Emu can relate these people to, Davy D. Jones and Joy Boy. But there could be something deeper to this for sure. Think of it like a window into Emu's mind, where this could be some sort of residual effect based on Emu's powers in some way, where Emu has a hard time discerning present from past. Now, after that, number 2, is that Emu explains to Rocks that its world is still incomplete. And then Rocks says, it ain't your world. 1, what do you mean by your world? And then 2, what is incomplete? I could go into this very deeply, I really could, but probably another video, another day. This could be very shallow, very, very meaningless, or it could be deep, like mural Harley text deep. But again, another video, another day, because I can't spend too much time focusing on theory per theory. But what I do want to spend time on is this, though, for sure. Emu takes all the attacks of Rocks and company. Emu, though, reforms and then unleashes a wave of Conqueror's Haki. This, I think, is very interesting here. Why? Because when Emu unleashes this wave of Conqueror's Haki, and you can see how beforehand it's kind of staring off into the distance, the next few panels you see of Emu, it knows where Eris, Rocks' wife, and Teach, his son, are. I can see them running through the distant forests. What did Emu just do? There's a few things here. Number 1, Emu, potentially, the entire time while fighting against Rocks, even though Rocks' company were going hard for sure, Emu may have been focusing on where to find the Davy Clan members. And then so the entire time, it was focused solely on that task, even though it was fighting against Rocks' company. But then number 2 could be, hold on, the entire time it was focused on Rocks' company, but after that big move, something clicked, and then it unleashed that wave of Conqueror's Haki, which was an attempt to search for Eris and Teach. Which means what? That means that Emu combined Conqueror's Haki with Observation Haki, which would be interesting. Number 3, which in some sense you could argue kind of does piggyback number 2, is that Emu saw the chance to knock out all these Marines because all these Marines were, in a way, clutter. All the other noisy life forms that are in the area are cluttering its senses to try and find where Eris and Teach were, so that's why he knocked them out. So it was a combo move, not necessarily a combination, but he combined the uses of Conqueror's Haki to knock them out, and then Surge scanned the area via its Observation Haki. There's also the possibility that Emu already knew where Eris and where Teach were while the attack was going on, which is why we get the panel of Emu's eyes before we get the Conqueror's Haki being released. And so what may have happened here in this situation is that Emu was already committed to do the Zami Riverside on Rocks, but didn't want the Marines seeing this process. So it knocked out all the Marines in the area, knowing full well that it was going to flip Rocks' constitution. And then there's another thing I've heard too, where because of the combo move, Emu had all of its Haki kind of stored in a certain location, and then that Conqueror's Haki just erupted the moment it took all that damage. Kind of like, let's say, in a robot anime or in a TV show where the robot's destroyed, but then there's like a delayed explosion. But in this case, here would be Haki, because there are some folks that believe that Emu's body comprises mostly of Haki. The last part here for this section is that Emu does take all that damage, and Emu is clearly reforming. Still pretty shocking in some sense, because we know that a lot of Haki can do damage, lasting damage to immortals. We saw that in real time with Gaban and Summers. We saw that with Rocks and Garling, where it's lasting damage to immortals. But Emu's on a higher tier than Holy Knights. In fact, on the highest tier of immortality factor. More so than the Elders, more so than the Holy Knights. So the amount of Haki probably required to do lasting damage to Emu is probably going to be substantial. Way more than what Rocks and company could output at that point in time. Or if it's not the amount of Haki, it's a certain technique of Haki. I do want to refer back to what happened with the Joy Boy Haki knot. The residual effects of Joy Boy's Haki on the Elders, which de-transformed them, that Haki scared Emu. And so it may not have just been because it was Joy Boy's haki, but also because it's a certain technique, the ultimate haki that Joy Boy was able to achieve. That could also have been why Emu was scared as well. Remember, in chapter 1122, Joy Boy tells Meth, and I quote, "I've tied a knot of the greatest of haki and locked it inside your body." Rox and company, specifically Rox, because I would say that Rox is the strongest of the certain batch of folks that we see fighting against Emu right now, likely none of them at this point in time know the greatest of haki. And that probably is not related to the amount of haki someone has, but more so how do you apply a certain technique of haki. That's, again, my guess. And you need that to really give Emu a shakeup in earnest. There's a final thing, which is even more surprising. And again, I ordered a video on this. Check it over here, boom. But basically, Emu was able to Domai Riverside, Rox D Zebek. There's a lot of takes on this. There's a lot of takes on this. But as a reminder, when we go back to chapter 1150, what do we see? We see that Brogy gets his arm blown off by Emu. And then Emu then makes some sort of demonic pact with Brogy. After making the circle around Brogy, Brogy gets sunken into the ground and then gets flipped Domai Riverside. And then the key thing here is that when Gunko Emu does this to Brogy, they say, and I quote, "In exchange for some measure of your lifespan, thou will receive an undying body and uncanny strength." So when Emu does penetrate Rox, but Rox feels nothing, this is working on a level that Rox can't comprehend. It's working on a level that probably alters his life force, his essence, his soul in some way. I'm gonna probably do another video just focusing on the Domai Riverside itself, because there are unique things about One Piece power systems that I think Oda has really touched upon, but I think they're quintessential. And that's the soul aspect to One Piece. And I think that Emu is really tapping into that soul element to the highest degree of evil possible in the story. Because someone like Rox got transformed. Haki didn't matter. Even though Rox's haki is gnarly, again, someone like Garling, an immortal with an immortal body, got beaten by Rox because of Rox's skill and haki and so on and so forth. But Emu is not, it's not in the same galaxy, honestly. It's crazy the difference here between the immortality factor of Emu compared to someone like Garling. But then also knowing that Emu can transform Rox just like that. Just like that. How does someone like Rox get transformed so quickly and so efficiently? This is one of the most shocking moments in One Piece, because Emu is presenting to us right now one of the most busted powers you see in the story. There's only a few of the powers that can match, and I would still say that the strongest power in the story we've seen so far is a canon character and a canon power, but mostly shown in the movie, and that's Uta. Uta has the strongest power in One Piece for sure. But at the same time, in terms of canon, if Emu could just always flip someone's constitution, no matter what, and then control you, no matter what. Now we have to beg the questions of how is this possible in earnest. But one thing that I will say is that the idea that it ties to someone's homeland, I do like a lot. Because I was told, and I did have to fact check this too, the words Domai Riverside in Latin mean return home or coming back home. And then folks are theorizing Emu might have to be on someone's homeland in order to change their soul. The giants of Elbaf were changed on Elbaf, first with Brogy, then with Dory. And then they started to change other giants around them in that Domai Riverside board game fashion. Another name for the River Sea board game is the Othello. In that same fashion, we see how Dory and Brogy, they change other giants to become demons. And then earlier in this flashback, we saw Davy clan members, specifically Davy clan members that lived and probably were born on God Valley. They were transforming into demons, already transforming into demons. We saw it happen to Rox's dad and then his grandma, but nobody else. Nobody else on Elbaf were transformed to demons, and nobody else on God Valley either. It was only the natives. So it could be the case here where it only works if you're in your native homeland, country. But then what constitutes homeland? If you live in Pennsylvania and then Emu flips you around, is it because you live in Pennsylvania, Philly, your neighborhood, or is it the entire USA? Is it the entire North America? That's where things get really scary. But that's what comes to character. Overall character for this was A++. A++ for this chapter of One Piece. And then finally, for the story progression, real quickly here, we get to see Emu transform. We get to see Emu actually utilize the shadows we've seen before with, let's say, Saturn's legs in various ways and actually kill some Marines. So Emu has no care at all whatsoever about the Marines and so on. They're just ants, fodder, insects, which does make sense. Emu would kind of see it that way. Not crazy there. You see the mentality that the elders have and so on. So Emu would be even worse than them. Gets his leg cut off by rocks, and then that fight proceeds to go on. As that goes on, we get to see Captain John make a move. And then we get to see what happens to Dragon, where Dragon was carrying Shanks and then gets substitution jutsu'd by Shanks' amazing ninjutsu at toddler status. Shanks already doing ninpo. And Shanks walks into a treasure chest. So this is how Shanks winds up on the Roger Pirates, because we do find out that Shanks was found on a treasure chest in the same way that he found Uta in a treasure chest in the Chronicles of Uta and in the movie as well. So that is canon, where Shanks was found in a treasure chest. And we know because Rayleigh told the boys, and also Gaban, where they were gathering the treasure. So Rayleigh and Gaban were on treasure gathering mode as Roger handled whatever he had to handle. So we can thank Captain John for that. And in the alternate timeline, he winds up on the Marine ship, which will be a pretty funny what if, not gonna lie to you. But that being said though, Captain John, we get to see that situation. We get annihilated by Guanzui, then Guanzi runs into Shiki, and then Shiki's realizing that, oh my god, these chests are worth 1 billion per chest. Maybe Captain John's treasure is in part the God Valley treasure. So this entire time, Buggy was searching for God Valley treasure, which would be very intriguing if that was the case, for sure. But then later on in the chapter, we can see Big Mom come back, a big combo move on Emu, but then Emu, after sensing where Eris and where Teach were, I'm gonna take him out. Actually, I lied. It's gonna be you, Rox, and then Rox to transform. So in terms of story progression, it's really simple, where Rox starts to transform, and now Shanks in the chest. You can see how that happens, while we get to see the members of the Rox Pirates once again at each other's throat trying to kill each other. No synergy at all, unlike other pirate crews like the Roger Pirates, clearly. That's it for story progression for this chapter, One Piece. Pretty simple, straightforward, but again, good nonetheless. This chapter is an amazing chapter. I would say a 9 or 9.5 out of 10. I think it's a phenomenal chapter, but there are questions for sure. Rox, how could that happen to you? You have so much hockey, it doesn't make any sense for someone like you to transform into a demon. That's where we need to find more intel about Emu, what he can do, and why he can do in the first place. Until then, this is gonna be a 9 or 9.5 out of 10 in my book for the chapter review. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you guys and gals enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.